Quilters, welcome back to my channel, Pages and Stitches. My name is Kelly and I'm very pleased that you're here with me today for my third Quilters Corner update. For today, my plan was to show you what I'm going to call a tour of my finishes. I'm going to go through all my completed projects with you, but most of them are going to be loaded up on the screen in photos because for the most part, my quilts I make as gifts. So they're either given away as baby gifts or wedding presents or Christmas gifts. So unfortunately I don't have all of them with me anymore to be able to show you, but I wanted to show you my finished projects so you can see kind of what's going on and what I have under my belt in my portfolio as far as quilt making goes. Hey Quilters, I was editing my video real quick and I realized I forgot to do my reading update. And oh, there's Milo. So Milo's saying hi. Since my last video, I finished the book I told you I started, and I have just started the Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. So she's a big girl. I'm going to be reading her for a while. I'm not a fast reader by any means. So that is my reading update. I do have a little bit of haul that I wanted to show today. So I'm going to go through that really quickly and then we'll get started with the finishes tour. So first I wanted to show you, I talked about this last time that I was going to get this pattern called Cinnamon Toast to use with my Anna Maria Horner fabrics. And it came in and I've already got this started. So I've got a new works in progress to show you for my next update. But this is Cinnamon Toast by Madison Cottage Design. And that's a fun pattern. And super easy too. So that's if you're at all intimidated by like half square triangles or, you know, making a large quilt without it taking up a bunch of your time, this is a good one. So the next thing I wanted to show you was I got these really fantastic Wonderfil bobbins, these pre-threaded bobbins. I bought them in black and then I bought them in like a cream color. For my machine, I quilt on I stitch on a baby lock. So I have the blue class 15 threads and they're just like amazing because if you're like me and you hate winding a bobbin, these hold so much more thread than what your machine would be able to wind on a bobbin on your own. So I invested in these because I can't stand whenever I'm in the middle of stitching something and then I run out of bobbin thread, but you don't notice it for a little while. And then you have to go back and redo everything. So that's just specifically to help me out in that department. And those are awesome. And they come in a million different colors under the sun. I just got black and cream because those are the colors I use the most. So this next thing I wanted to show you is a free pattern that I downloaded from Fat Quarter Shop called Black Tie Affair Quilt. And I'll try and get it to where you can see it in the light. Yeah, there you go. So I didn't use this colored printer, so it's hard to tell, but the background is stitched to look like a shirt with a tie in the middle. So the reason why I downloaded this is because my biological father passed away when I was really young, and me and my siblings kind of have different stuff of his that we've kept throughout the years and sort of traded around with each other. And just like my brother has his guitar and I have their wedding rings. My sister has some of his shirts and stuff. So recently my brother passed on to me a bunch of his old silk ties. So these are ties from like the 80s. So they're super, like they're big and they're goofy patterns, they're very loud prints. Certainly not anything that my brother would wear. And he was like, I'm going to give these to you because you probably could think of something creative to do with them. So what I'm going to do is this pattern, the Black Tie Affair. I haven't decided what I'm going to use for the background fabric yet. I don't have any of his old business shirts. I don't think we even kept any of those. But I'm going to cut these open and use these materials, these silks, as the tie in the pattern. And this will make a wall hanging I have 6 ties, so I can make 2 of these and then like attach them together as a wall hanging. And thought it'd be really cool to have on my wall with some of my other stuff, and just as a nice little way to remember my dad. Okay, so the last bit of haul I wanted to show you today, I'm really excited about because this took almost a year to get. So my local quilt shop is Lone Star Quiltworks here in Bryan College Station, Texas. And March of last year, Ruby Star announced a fabric line called Stay Gold. And then they made a quilt for the shop that I just loved immediately. And pieces of it came in sporadically throughout the last, 10 months now? But they finally got the last piece in, which was a panel for this quilt a couple weeks ago, and they were able to finally kit it up and sell it. And so I've been waiting to buy this quilt kit for almost a year, and I finally got it. Finally. Let me try and get my ring light out of there. So this is the Stay Gold panel quilt by Ruby Star Society. And it's massive. It's 95 by 95 finished. So that's pretty big. It's a king size quilt. So I finally got it and I want to open it with you guys. And all their quilt kits come in these like clamshell boxes that are really nice because you can put other projects in there when you're done. So here's the pattern. Let me get a close-up of the pattern. And it's just super like retro and funky and pretty, and I love it. Here's all the colorways of the blocks. And in order to make the pattern, you have to use, it requires a fat quarter bundle, which is what this is, of the full Stay Gold line. And then you have this fabric, which is Sparkle. Sparkle is a line that Ruby Star Society has expanded on over and over again because it goes with like all of their designers' patterns and their fabric lines. So there's a cream sparkle, and those stars in there are metallic gold. And then there's also a navy sparkle with metallic stars. I think those are rose gold. Isn't that really pretty? And that's the cornerstones in the sashing. And then last but not least is this fabric panel that is ginormous. Like there's no way I'm going to be able to fit all this in here. But it's got all these different blocks that you can cut out. This one's kind of cool because it looks like a vintage Betty White. That you put in the center of the quilt blocks, and you can like shop around because there's extra in here than what's needed in the quilt. You can kind of workshop which ones you want to cut out and use. And there's a ton more on here that you're not seeing, but that's just because like I can't open it up all the way to get it on camera. But I'm super excited to finally have this pattern. It's taken forever and a day to get here, and it's finally here. So this is going to be very quick to come up on my to-do list for my works in progress. That's Stay Gold by Ruby Star. Okay, so now I want to start my finishes tour of all the quilts that I've done, and I'm going to be looking down this way a lot because I have my laptop open right here, and it's got the photos that I'm going to be inserting and showing you, as well as all the notes I have on those quilts. So you'll have to forgive me for looking down and away a whole bunch of times, but I want to go ahead and get started because there's quite a few here, and I want to give you as much information as I can about each of them. So the first quilt I ever made, I actually don't have a picture of. It was a bedspread quilt that I made, and it was 105 by 105. I had a full-size bed at the time, and I made a king-size quilt so that it would hang all the way to the floor and I wouldn't have to use a bed skirt. And it was just blocks. It was just like 15-inch blocks that I cut out from random fat quarters, and it lasted for like 9 years, and then it started to fall apart and I finally replaced it. And it's now being donated to my local pet shelter. So that was the first quilts I ever made. It lasted a good long while, but now it's now been retired. And that was a really ambitious quilt to make for my first quilt, was something that massive. So I just did, for the quilting, I just did like the hand-tied embroidery in random places. Like I didn't actually quilt it on a machine. I just sort of, I sewed all the blocks together, and then I did the hand-tied quilting, and I hand bound. The binding was done by hand as well. So that was my introduction into quilting. But the next quilt I made is this quilt here. And this is a baby quilt I made for my friend Tina. There was no pattern that I was going by. I just kind of settled on a size, which was 40 by 40, which is kind of usually anywhere between 35 by 35 and 40 by 40 is usually about the size of a baby quilt that I make. This one was 40 by 40. And all of the colors, or all of the fabrics were just fat quarters that I bought from Joann's that I thought looked nice together. And so I made blocks in stripes. I rotated them every other block, and I made the colors in a line. And then on the back, I just did another line of those blocks, and I did square quilting in each of the squares. Like in these pictures, this was before I knew to take pictures of my finished projects. There's no binding on it because I still wasn't done. I think I was just giving somebody a progress update at that time. But this quilt I gave to my friend Tina for her first baby, Jack, and they still have it to this day and use it. And they've since had another son, Henry, and they also used it for him. And I just adore them for that they've kept it. So this next quilt is a wall hanging. It's called Perfect Form by Laura Heine, and it's a collage quilt pattern. All of the floral motifs and the butterfly motifs were cut out from other random fabrics and then attached to a double-sided fusible interfacing called Steam-A-Seam that I used for Steam-A-Seam 2. That's what I used for this quilt. And I just designed the layout, or I laid all the flowers out on the dress form in a way that I thought was appealing. And on the back is Kaif fabric that is stitched in a gradient. And the background of the front is like different sewing themed fabrics. So there's like measuring tape, and there's one that has like little pins and needles on it. So if you have any interest at all in collage quilting, you should look up Laura Heine. She's got a bajillion patterns, but there's tutorials online about how to do it. And it's just such a fun project to do. And I really love a good gradient. And so this was a fun way to do like a rainbow gradient with flowers and butterflies and stuff. But this lives in my bedroom. I have it in this picture. It's on like a pants hanger just hung over the back of my door, but I've since bought like a nice hanging clamp, I guess, to attach it to my wall. So this next quilt is another one that doesn't have a pattern. I just kind of came up with the dimensions myself. I call it my pink and green bricks, and it's all like vintage florals in the colorways pink and green. And the sashing is just like a light cream color. And you'll find that with a lot of my quilts, I don't have a pattern. I just kind of know what I want it to look like, and I'll figure out the dimensions later. So for ones like this, it's just super easy. I must have come across like an inspiration photo on Pinterest, which is usually where it comes from for me. And then I just bought some pink and green florals and cut out my bricks and put some white sashing in it. And it's just simple straight line quilting. And I had extra fabric, so on the back I just added a little bit extra to the side of my white fabric on the back, and that's the finished product. So this next one is another quilt kit. It's a wall hanging, and unfortunately I don't know what it's called because I got it at the International Quilt Festival several years ago, and it's just an astrology themed wall hanging. All the different blocks in the middle are the different zodiac signs, and I don't know what the fabric line is. I don't even know what shop I got it from, but the backing is this beautiful black and gold metallic globe print that I got from Lone Star Quiltworks. You know what, honestly at this point I don't even know where that material came from, but it had like a celestial kind of print to it, so it looked really good on the back. And then this was the first go I ever had with using the Quilt as you go method. So what I did was I designed in PowerPoint these different star shapes, like with straight lines, just different star shapes, and I drew them and traced them onto the front with little chalk fabric marker, and I quilted the different stars to the quilt sandwich. And then I used the Quilt as you go method where you leave like an inch border with your backing fabric, and then you stitch those borders together to make a row, and you flip them and fold them under and top stitch along those borders, so it creates like a faux sashing and a faux binding whenever you have them all attached together. I know that probably didn't make any sense, but if you look up Quilt as you go tutorials on YouTube, there's a bajillion different methods, and this is just one of them that I learned from one of those videos. The next quilt I made is a baby quilt that I made for my friend Tracy. It's the Fancy Forest quilt by Elizabeth Hartman. I've done a lot of Elizabeth Hartman quilts. She's probably one of my favorite quilt designers, and her quilts are really baby quilt friendly, and my friends are very fertile, so I make a lot of baby quilts. But this was the first one for my friend Tracy, and it's just a gradient of green to turquoise to blue. So I don't know what it is about a gradient. I love a gradient. So any chance I get to do one, I basically do. And the backing and the background fabric is the same. It's just like this cross-hatched, very light gray. So, and then the quilting, I did stitch in the ditch around each of the animals and in all their seams between the colors. This next one is another baby quilt that I did for my friend Ashley. It's a Polaroid quilt that you may have seen several different examples of online. They're pretty popular. I wasn't following a pattern for this. I just figured out the dimensions and then fussy cut. I figured out how big I wanted the actual images in the Polaroids to be, fussy cut different images out of some child appropriate fabric, and then I built my Polaroid around it. And I also did Quilt as you go on this quilt, but I used a slightly different method. So on this method, I just quilted the top and the batting, but not the backing. And then I stitched all of those squares together, which were just Quilt as you go with the top and the batting. And then you attach it to the backing and you stitch in the ditch between all the blocks to attach it to the backing and then bind it like normal. And that's probably my preferred method for Quilt as you go. I think it looks better and it's neater. So this one was one of my favorite quilts to make. It's super cute. It's very kid-friendly for like I Spy kind of quilts. And then on the back, I just have this really super cute camera fabric that I got from Lone Star Quiltworks. And the binding is just a pink and white polka dot. And I love that quilt. I kind of want to make another one, but like adult sized, because that was such a fun one to make. I had a really good time with that. And that one went to my friend Ashley when she had her first daughter. So this next one is a really fun one. It's actually this quilt right here behind me. that I'm leaning against. This is called Summer of Love. And this pattern I got from Quilty magazine back in like 2016. And Quilty magazine isn't even in print anymore. They're all online. They're all electronic. I think you can order like print versions. Don't quote me on that, of the magazine. But you can go to their website and you can order all of their past quilt patterns in PDF form. So you can still get this one online. This one's called Summer of Love. But the original pattern had it in red, yellow, green, and blue, and the background was white, and that's just not my style. So the color palette for this one was inspired. At the time, I was working at a jewelry store, and there was a ring there that I really loved, and it had these really beautiful stones in there that were carnelian, amber, amethyst, and I don't remember what the blue stone was, but it was like a navy blue, almost glittery looking stone. And all of those were in a cluster ring, and I saw it and immediately went, oh, like, that's a color palette that I need to use for a quilt. Like, I just kind of knew it immediately. And so when I came across Summer of Love in Quilty magazine, I was like, there it is. That's what I'm going to use for that color palette. And the background and the backing fabric it's not black. It's actually like a dark charcoal tone on tone print that's got kind of like a crosshatch pattern in it. And so this one was just tons of fun to make. And then I'll put in a picture of the quilting on the back. I did, in each of the squares, I just quilted in the middle of all of their lines going out from the center, and I used the same color thread as the square on the front. So on the back, you can still see that same color palette traveling down the quilt, and that was a fun one to make. I really, really loved it. This next quilt is a baby quilt that I made for my friends Ryan and Erica. Went to college with them, and their first child was a little girl named Paisley. And so they showed pictures of her baby room, and it was done entirely in like turquoise and pink. And I just happened to have turquoise and pink fabric with Paisleys on it. So I just thought, all right, well, this was written in the stars. And the quilt pattern is just a disappearing 9 patch. So if you don't know what that means, it's you take a 9 patch block, which is 9 even sized squares in a row, and then you slice it up the middle this way and you slice it up the middle that way, and then you can rotate the blocks. And that's what I did. So I did turquoise and pink, and then cream and gold. So there's a lot of metallic gold in this fabric, which they really loved. And so yeah, little Paisley got a turquoise and pink Paisley quilt. So this quilt is the only quilt I've ever made money off of. I actually sold this one to a family friend who decided she liked it enough to buy it, and she offered to pay for it. So I was like, yeah, of course. I don't know what this block is called, or excuse me, what this quilt pattern is called necessarily. I found some photos on Pinterest from different blogs online of quilters who were doing so like a quilt group, and they were posting these pictures of these blocks as they went, and one of them called it the winged square. So I don't know if that's the name of the block or if that's the name of the pattern. Couldn't tell you who designed it. I just found it online, and then I figured out the dimensions myself. And it's essentially done like a 9 patch. So the center block is a pattern, and you pull 2 colors from the pattern, and you make half square triangles. You make 12 half square triangles of each color with your backing, or excuse me, your background fabric, and they're angled in towards the middle, and then the opposite corners are your background fabric. And you just assemble it like a 9 patch. So I made a quilt like this, and all of the background fabrics are different tone on tone blacks. None of them are the same. and it made this really wonderful, colorful quilt. And then the backing fabric is an RJR print of like a multicolored watercolor print, and it just worked perfectly for all the different colors that I used in that quilt. And I had such a good time making it. And if I can call myself a professional quilter because I've sold something now, it's only because of this quilt, because that's the only thing I've ever sold. And it wasn't because I was trying to, like, somebody just offered to pay for it. So I sold it. But it was a good time while it lasted. So this quilt is another quilt that didn't have a pattern. I just kind of came up with it. It was inspired by a photo collage that I saw on Pinterest. And all the photos were oriented just like this pattern, with the little squares in between and then big squares behind it. So all I did was I pulled out my graph paper and I decided I wanted it to be a 60 by 60 lap quilt, and then reverse engineered it from there. And I just used these brown and gold. Oh, it's this quilt right here. Right there. I just used different brown and gold prints from my fabric stash to make this quilt. And it came together super quickly. It's not a complicated pattern. Again, it's just from a photo collage I saw online, and the collage wasn't even in these colors. It's just I saw the layout and decided that I really liked that and that it'd be a fun quilt pattern, so I made it. So this next quilt is a baby quilt that I made for my friend Destiny, and I did the same quilt as you go method that I used for the astrology wall hanging. And so the front is just different blocks that are kid friendly. She was having a little girl. So I just found a couple of like pink and girly themed fabrics to put on the front. And I found this really cute pink and triangle print fabric for the back. And I did a real quick quilt as you go so I could give it to her before she had her baby. This quilt is my pride and joy. I love this quilt so much, and I'm almost sad that I don't have it anymore. But I made it as a wedding gift for my friends Mark and Amanda when they got married. And their theme was like fairy tale book themed wedding. I was inspired by the invitations that were sent out. They all had books, and they were all about, you know, the fairy tale ending. That was the spiel for the theme. But I designed this quilt myself. All the blocks were designed by me. All the little bits and pieces on the shelves came out of my noggin. And I'm super proud of how it turned out because it looks so cute. And I had the best time making this quilt. I was just like, I enjoyed every stitch. I enjoyed getting every piece of fabric together and playing with the color combinations. On all of the books, anytime there's a little like title card on the book, those were all done with a fabric that has a metallic on it. And the M and the A that you see on there for Mark and Amanda, that's done on a gold fabric, so that's metallic as well. They also have a couple kitties, so I worked a kitty in there for their quilts. And it was tons of fun making this quilt. I miss it so much. And whenever I got to their wedding and we entered the reception area, they actually had it hung on the wall in the reception as part of their decorations and I saw it and I cried. Like, it was just so like touched that they liked it enough to have it displayed at what is obviously like the most important day of their lives at the time. The backing is just like a geometric kind of swirled circular print. And I had this one professionally quilted, and it's just like a swirly loop-de-loop kind of pattern. I knew if it was going to be a gift for such a momentous occasion that I wanted some quilting done that was a little bit better than what I could do. So I had it professionally quilted at Lone Star Quiltworks. I have another baby quilt here. This one is Lepidoptera, and I may have said that wrong, but that's the Latin word for butterfly. And it's a pattern by Elizabeth Hartman, and it was for my friends Alicia and AJ. For their daughter Imogen. Like, what a awesome name for a little girl. So I just thought this little girl probably is going to grow up not liking the color pink because she sounds so cool. Just based on what they were naming her. And AJ and Alicia are cool kids anyways. So I made this butterfly pattern and I kind of modeled it after a monarch. So it's got oranges and golds and blacks, and all of the fabrics have a metallic in them. And the backing is this really pretty leafy forest print, and all the leaves are metallic gold. And then the background on the front is a cream sparkle. And it turned out just awesome. The quilting is just an echo quilting around the edge of the butterfly. And then the same for inside on each of the wings. I just traced the edges of all the wings to the center point. I have another baby quilt here, and this is for my friends Ashley and Nick and their little girl. Their little girl's nursery was done entirely in yellow and gray and silver. So that was my inspiration for the color palette. I just pulled really pretty silver metallic prints and then added some pretty soft yellows, and then I just did some stripe blocks and just randomly, and then alternated the orientation of the blocks. And then the quilting is just like a snake line through all of the blocks all the way down. And then the back is a white print, but it's got silver metallic cross hatching on it. This diamond quilt is for my friend Chris when he had his first son. This required a special ruler, which I will insert here. And so I just I found a color palette. This is usually how my process works with these baby quilts. I find a color palette that I like online somewhere, and then pull fabrics that match that color palette, and then kind of work backwards from there. So I found this color palette. I thought it was really, mature and masculine, but still appropriate for a baby. And I made these diamonds, or I cut these diamonds out, and the quilting, which you can see clearly on the back, is just zigzags within the rows of diamonds, and then between each row of diamonds is some more where I just quilted around the edges of the diamonds. And the effect, especially, which you can see on the back, the effect of that quilting is just stunning. I really liked the way that quilting came out. The back, I used just a white or a cream colored thread so that it really popped against that navy blue print. And then on the front, it just kind of blends in with the fabric itself, so the design of the quilt can stick out. So this quilt is called Delightful Desert by Elizabeth Hartman. It's a baby quilt I made for my friend Kaylin for her first kiddo, her little boy. She told me that that his nursery was going to be kind of forest and animal themed. So I went with the classic kind of forest color palette, browns and greens and creams. And that's where I pulled my colors for this quilt. And the quilting is really simple. It's just like a wavy line top to bottom. I use that quilting a lot whenever I'm bored with straight edge quilting. So that's the Delightful Desert quilt by Elizabeth Hartman. So this is another baby quilt for my friend David. David is actually the brother of Chris, who I also made a baby quilt for. And when he had his son, he mentioned that the theme for the bedroom was going to be where the wild things are. And so I kind of I went looking at the book. It was a book I read growing up that I just love. And I pulled some pictures that had a color palette from that book that I really liked. And that's where I got my colors for this. And I just kind of arranged them, again, in a gradient. I love a gradient. And I workshopped it until I finally found a layout that worked. And this was the end result. He was super grateful for it. The backing is a gray, cloudy print with a metallic gold dot. A lot of my, I love a fabric that has a metallic on it, so I use that in basically all of my quilts. I don't think there's many that don't feature a metallic in there. This next quilt is a fun one, and it's actually this quilt you see right here. This is a quilt pattern called the Mary quilt. And I'll insert a picture of what the original pattern looks like. And you can see in the original pattern that it has these tan sort of large background bits that feature in kind of the corners. And I decided I didn't like that. I wanted it to be a little bit more colorful. And I thought for this quilt, it would be really good to feature large print fabrics. And so I pulled all my capes and I supplemented some from my mom's stash. My cat just jumped in my lap, so that's what you're seeing. He's joining us for this video. And it's done entirely in Cafe facet fabrics, including the sashing between the blocks. It's a white and blue dot. So the end result is really nice. It's, I mean, the backing fabric is this big floral. The binding is a purple kind of stripe. And it's all Cafe material. So that was a fun one to make. And it turned, the quilting is just really simple. It's just like 2 lines, straight lines on either side of the seams. But yep, now it lives here on the back of my couch. So this quilt is called Greenhouse. It's another Elizabeth Hartman quilt. As you can see, I make a ton of hers. And this was a wedding gift for my best friend, Melissa. She likes succulents and cactus, and so do I. So that was kind of my inspiration behind this quilt pattern for her. So I just pulled different greens to make the succulents, and then the pots are mostly done on a brown metallic print. And the background is this really pretty plant fabric that perfectly complements the front. And the quilting is just simple straight line quilting between all of the seams. So that one lives with my friend Melissa now. So this next quilt is, it requires a little bit of an explanation. So there is a quilt out there called Long Time Gone by Jen Kingwell. And one of the blocks on Long Time Gone is a block she calls Jacob's Ladder. And when you put them all together, I think on the Long Time Gone quilt, it makes a block that's like yay big. Like, it's not very big, and it's just a part of the big quilt. But I liked that block so much, and I saw someone making it, and they kind of fussy cut around their different fabrics to make sort of like an I Spy section for the Jacob's Ladder. And so I was like, I'm gonna run with that. So what I did was I reverse engineered the pattern, blew it up a little bit to get to the size I want. I think it comes to 70 by 70. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I think all these blocks I made 10 by 10. And then I kind of did that I Spy design where I pulled a bunch of fabrics that have fun shapes and stuff in the back. And that's what I used to make all the different blocks for this. You can see Milo sitting in the middle of it. Isn't he cute? But yeah, that's I literally just saw a picture of it once, and I was like, it caught a wild hair, and was like, I'm making that into a whole quilt. And so I did. I had originally planned to do it in sort of like a rainbow, but when I laid it all out, I didn't really like the way it looked. So I switched up and made it random, and it's just kind of a lot more colorful and fun that way. And it does have a nice I Spy element to it. I do love a good I Spy quilt. So whenever I'm sitting there with it on my lap, I can look and see all the little images that are in all the different blocks. And then I did diagonal straight line quilting. I did three seams this way, 3 seams this way, and then up the top to bottom and left to right. So it's like the quilting kind of mimics the X design in the block, which I really like. So this quilt was a quilt kit that I bought from Lone Star Quiltworks, and it's the Magic Butterfly Quilt. So the center of it is this really beautiful panel, this gold panel with a metallic print, and then the four corners on the outside with the butterflies is another panel, and that you fussy cut the butterflies out from. And then on the back is one of my favorite parts. You have this really gorgeous dark charcoal color with repeating butterfly prints on it, and the butterflies are all in a bright gold metallic as well. And this is another one I had professionally quilted. I just thought it was too beautiful to risk messing up with my quilting. So it's another like loop-de-loop kind of pattern, but it's got leaves in it, and it's done with a light gray variegated thread, and then bound with a royal blue and gold fabric. We're almost done, guys. Hang in there. So this is a wall hanging done, designed by Laura Heine, called Deceased. And it's a skeleton with flower prints all over it. The original, so I switched this one up a little bit, and I made her into what I call my corpse bride, because the original pattern, her arms are kind of situated like this and she's holding something. But I decided that I wanted her to have this big gorgeous headdress that I got in my head that it looked more like a veil. So I was like, oh, she's gonna be a bride. So I reoriented her hands to look like this, and so she could be holding a bouquet. And then on top of everything else, I cut out a ton of butterflies, and I just covered her in butterflies. So there's flowers everywhere, but there's like 25 different butterflies just all over this wall hanging. And she actually, you can't see it, but she actually hangs on my wall just like right here off camera. And she's got some like little snails. There's a sun off to the side. She's just kind of like a whimsical floral skeleton, if you will. The back is a pretty swirly gold pattern, and then the binding is an orange and gold polka dot. So this is a baby quilt that I made for my friend Stephanie. She's one of my coworkers at the clinic I work at, and she just had her first daughter. That she named Charlotte, and they call her Lottie. So I nicknamed this quilt Lots of Love, LOTT', Lots of Love. And it's just a heart print, a heart pattern that I figured out the dimensions for myself. I wasn't following a specific pattern. So I found the big floral print first because I thought it was reminiscent of how they were doing her nursery. And I pulled all the colors from there. That's where I got my color palette. And then the background is this white tone-on-tone shimmery fabric. It's not a metallic, but it's shimmery. In the pictures, it's kind of photographing it's photographing weird, but in person it looks really just like sparkly and shimmery and ethereal, and just the whole thing, it turned out really sweet. And I did just a simple grid quilting, but I did it with a light purple thread that I pulled to match the light purples in the fabric color palette. So this was one of my most recent projects. This is a tree skirt that was a free pattern that I downloaded from jordanfabrics.com. Jordan Fabrics is a fabric shop from up north, and they have their own YouTube channel. And I watched them do a tutorial on this tree skirt, and I just thought it was so pretty. So I went and I downloaded the pattern, and this project made me want to hurt people because it was so, the pattern itself was easy, but I used a fabric that was so difficult to work with, and I kick myself for it after I was in the middle of the project. So it's a minky material, like a very soft, fuzzy flimsy material with a metallic on top. And if you've ever worked with that fabric, it's such a pain in the butt because it sheds, it gets everywhere, it curls on itself, it's stretchy. If you were worried about sewing on a bias, like, that's nothing compared to sewing with minky fabric. And so what I did was I used a fusible fleece and I fused them together instead of using a batting in the middle to sort of help prevent stretching, because it was very prone to stretching. And that helped a little bit, but not much. And then this pattern also has Y seams in it where the big diamonds meet in the middle. So it was, all in all, it was difficult to work with. But the finished product is pretty. It looks super nice under my Christmas tree this year. I'm glad I did it, but I'm also more glad that I'm done with it because it was such a pain in the butt to work with. But the pattern itself was great. It's not the pattern's fault. It was my fault because I had a poor choice in fabric. Okay, this is the last finish I have to show you. Everything else is near finish or still a work in progress. So this is the last finish I'm going to show you. And that is the Kittens by Elizabeth Hartman. And I used entirely floral prints on my kitties, and they turned out just phenomenal. There's 2 kittens on this fabric that have glasses that I cut out. I put on Steam-A-Seam, the double fusible interfacing and I fused those to 2 of the kitties, and I had this one professionally quilted. And if you can see, I'll try to put a picture where you can see, the quilting is kitties. It's little random kitties leaning in different directions. And the thread is a variegated coral color that matches a lot of the coral fabrics that are in this print, or in this pattern. And I love the way it turned out. I had it quilted at Lone Star Quiltworks because they have that service there. And the backing fabric is just a dark floral that matched one of the florals that I used on the front. And it's such a cute quilt. I love the way it turned out. It lives in my bedroom upstairs. I still have it because my bedspread is yellow, so it matches my room. And this one I'm really proud of. I got a lot of compliments on it whenever I was picking it up from the store. A lot of people had some very nice things to say about it. So that's the last one I have to show you for this finishes tour. That's a total of 25 projects, not including the bedspread that I was telling you about at the beginning of this video. And oh man, I feel like in some ways that's a lot, but it also feels like not nearly enough because I have easily 5 or 6 projects I'm working on upstairs right now. And it's a good thing that I give most of my quilts away because frankly, I just don't have the room for all my, there's only so much space on my couch to hang quilts off the back. And so tell me, what do you do with all your finishes? Like, do they live in your home? Do you have a giant stack of quilts that have built up in a bedroom or in a corner somewhere? Or are you like me and you give most of them away? I would love to know. I would love to know what you do with all your finishes. Yes, so my next update is going to be an update on my works in progress. I've got a couple that I'm working on right now that you've seen in a previous video, and then I've added some to my list of works in progress, and I'm gonna add the Stay Gold quilt kit that I just showed you soon. And so the other thing I wanted to say was I'm gonna start spacing out my update videos a little bit more. I've sort of gone through and given you a couple videos showing stuff I wanted to kind of get out of the way right away, showing you my stash, showing you my works in progress, and then now the finishes tour. So the next video is going to be an update on my works in progress, but I'm going to space those out because I need to have time to actually make progress on those works in progress. So yeah, that's everything. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments down below. I'm going to leave everything that I can in the description box under the video regarding like patterns I used or fabrics I used or links to different stuff and different websites that I mentioned. And yeah, I think that's everything. I'm so grateful you came by today. If you are a new subscriber, welcome. I'm very, very happy you're here. Drop me a comment and say hello so I can say hello back. I love to get to know you. I love to get to know fellow needle crafters and figure out what's going on. If you have videos of your own that you make about quilting or about cross stitching, like I make my other videos on, I'll go check them out. Just tell me, hey, I got videos I'd love for you to see. And if you want to follow my progress on Instagram, my Instagram handle is the same as my YouTube channel, which is Pages and Stitches, spelled pages, the number 3 stitches. And it is a private channel, or I'm sorry, it's a private profile. So if you send me a request and I don't immediately accept you, it's probably because I'm trying to figure out who you are. You can always send me a message and say, hey, I found you on YouTube. I just want to follow your Instagram too. And that's totally fine. I'll accept you. I just keep everything private because it's got some personal photos and like it has my lifestyle on there as well as my needlecraft work. So yeah, I think that's everything. I can't wait to see you guys again next time where I can give you an update on everything I've been working on. And until then, happy quilting, happy stitching, and I hope you have a great weekend. All right, talk to you later. Bye.